chapter 48. Servius, when he interveniced, when he turned up, taking the dative during, that's what the interbit means. This oration, in the middle of this oration, you might want to say, Servius turned up, being excitedist, aroused or stirred up by this trepido nuntiae, by this trepidatious message that he'd got, and ex tempore immediately from the vestibulo of the curia of the Senate House with a magna voce, with a great voice or loudly, quid hoc, what's this? He inquired. Tarquinus, what is this res? What does this matter? What's going on? Qua tu audacia, so audaciousness is female. So by what bold movement are you, with me vivo, with me living? That's the ablative. Orsus est, how do you dare, what boldness causes you to dare take initiative to call the patres, the Senate Fathers, or to considerate, or to sit in mea sed, in my seat, on my throne? And he, ferociously, adhake to these words, tenere, say, this is the seat of his father, patris suis, so he's holding the throne of his father, you might want to say. Continuing what's said, multo, by much is potior, it is better that the filius of the king, than a servum, than a slave, be the heir of the kingdom. Satis illum would be he, a male, satisfactorily for diu, for a long time. The eludentum, that's a participle of mocking, so the licentiousness or the allowing something to happen. So for a long time this had been endured, you might want to say, and insultassi, you could take that as insulting in English. He was insulting the masters. And a clamor, that's just the dinner on noise, from utrusque, from both sides, continues on with fatoribus, these are supporters. So from the supporters of both sides, a clamor orated, which means arose, and there was a concursus, fourth declension, of the populi, of the people. Concourse of the people, fiebat, happened, so they all ran into the curia, if you want to take that as running. And it was apparent, apparabatque, that regnaturum, that's future, he would rule, qui who, vicessit, who won in this contest would be the one who was the future king. So tum, then, Tarquinus, by the necessity, yam now, and ipsa, cogente, what have we got? Cogente is the ablative singular present participle, so being forced now to be bold to the end, necessitate in ipsa there. So by much, multo, antonet, correlatives, both in age and in verbus, in strength, he was validior. So Tarquinus is now driven on towards the end here. He started an action. So when he's in youth and strength, he's stronger. He rippled, he grabbed medium servium, servius around the middle or the waist, and ilatum quid, ferro tuli latus, there's the irregular. So he carried him from the curia outside into the inferior part through the steps. So the lower part of the steps, he dejected him, he threw him down. Grabbed him by the middle, took him outside and threw him down the stairs. Then it happened a fuga. There was a flight or running away. Regis apparator, so the apparators of the king, servants you might say, and the comitum and his companions, they went to a fuga. They fled. Himself, the king, prope, nilly ex sanguinis, typically means out of blood. It probably means he's like in a bad state. He's been thrown down the stairs, probably out of breath, etc. And when, without a regio comitatu, without his royal comitatu, this is like a bodyguards or something, he was recuperating himself, taking himself domum. As we see with domum, you don't use ad, you just put the accusative. So he was going home without his bodyguards, and then qui, those who were sent, abis, from there, by Tarquinus, consecutorent, that means they followed or pursued the fugientium, That's the present participle, so this would be the old king who was thrown downstairs. Those are sent by Tarquinius. They followed the fleeing king and they interficated him. Then they killed him. Creditor. It's believed, because this is not abhorrent or any difference from the Ceteroscula, from the rest of the crime, that by the admonitu, by the advice of Talia, id factum, this was done. That's the neuter. Certainly, he can say, in a carpento, in a carriage, id quod satis constat, constat's impersonal. This is satisfactorily agreed, that in a carriage, invecta, this would be Talia, she was brought into the forum. That's where they have the law courts and the Senate, I guess. And nec reverita. She's not very reverent way or fearing the coetum, the group of these men. And she evocated her virum, her husband. She called out her husband from the curia, and prima, she was the first who appellavited him as the regum, as the king. She was the first to call him king. A quo, from which, by the orders to facessere go away from such a tumult, when she was recuperating herself home again, she was taking herself home, and she had reached, it takes adorin, to the summit of the Cyprium Vicum, we'll put that as a proper noun, when, where recently was Dianium, that would be of Diana, the huntress goddess or whatever. There's a shrine there. Flectentai the carpendextra. So the carriage to the right, bend the carriage to the right into the Urbum Clivium. This is the hill of the city, basically. That's a capital as well. And I'll call that a capital as well. So she wanted to be evicted. She wanted to be carried to the right into this hill and to this Esquilarum hill. Pavidus, he resisted, so the driver resisted, and he inhibited, pulled back on the frenos, which are the reins. He who was agabating the Jumenta are the beasts. Agabat means he was the driver. And Jacentem, present participating again, and lying there to his domina, to his mistress, was Servium. So you have these in apposition. And so he pointed out that lying there, trucidatum, cut up and dead, was Servius. Okay. Fodum inhumatum qui, so foul and inhuman. Inde, then it is traditor, it is handed down. The Scellus locus, the crime of this place, and there is a monument to this Scellus. And it is called, vocant, the Vicum Scelleratum. Vicum's usually an area of the city. Sometimes you might want to say a street. So the street was the Scelleratum Street. There, amens, which means mad. It's male and female, the same. But she's a female. She was driven on by the furies of sister and viri, and of the man. Talia Furtor Aegisse. It is said she is Aegisse. She's driven the carpentum, the wagon, per the corpus, through the body of her father, and partum qui sanguis, and part of the blood and catus and the slaughter of her father, cruento, so it was stained on the vehicle itself, contaminata itself, and respersa. She's contaminated and respersed or inspersed or covered with. So she's covered with the blood, etc. She's taken it to her penates. These are the household gods, like the Lars. The penates are a bit different. Viriqui sui. Quibus iratus malo regni principio. So this is the beginning of such a bad reign, or such a bad kingship, you might want to say. And propedea means it wasn't for very long. It was sequented, followed by a similar exodus. So I'm guessing someone else dies in a similar way. Servius Tullius, regnavited, reigned for enos quator, 4 years and 44 years. Iter ut. Thus it is that, fully dative, bono, etiam, and moderato, so the succeeding the successor basically to this good and moderate Regi king, difficult to emulate. Would have been difficult to emulate such a good king as Servius Tullus, who reigned for 44 years. Counter, but this also, Cursed is added to his glory, that with Ilo, with him, same time, Justa and legitimate regna occiderat. So just and legitimate kingship died with him. Nearly done. Id ipsum, looks like so might, so looks like the rule of him, id's neuter, was mild and so moderate, his imperium, imperiums while we're in neuter. The imperium was so mild and so moderate, nevertheless, because unius, one of the 49 praenominals, of one, to deponere him, he had in his, look, so it looks like he had in his mind to place down this rule of one, which certain authors say, Nissi, unless they accept that there's scellus intestinum, intestinal means internal, this internal crime. So he had in his mind of liberating the patria, his fatherland. He had a concilia, which is a plan of agitating this, that he was going to do this plan, but this intestinal scellus had interrupted his plan. So to deponere means he was going to put down his kingship and restore liberty. Except that this had happened. And I'll bring up a daily dictionary. Okay, here we go, I've set it up. Intestinus, adjective, domestic, civil or internal. Top 20,000 words in use through the ages. That's it for the day.